Later on, we do have to talk about the open gate drama. That's been coming out right now, but then also we do have to talk about Sony in general, that, we're not in a bubble of Sony cameras. There are other brands out there that's breathing down Sony's neck, and that's going to be an issue with the A7V and absolutely with the FX2. So look, we all know that the A7V has dropped. It has that partially stacked 33 megapixel sensor. Essentially, it does everything that most people will need. It's a fantastic hybrid camera that does videos okay and does photos pretty well because it's 30 frames per second when it comes to the stills in 14-bit RAW, and then it can do up to 4K up to 120 frames per second. Sure, the 4K 120 is a crop, but you do have 4K up to 60 frames per second. It's got that amazing 4-axis tilt varying axle screen that we see in the A9 III, A1 Mark II, and the A7R5. Incredible screen, just everything in this, and it has that newer Bionz XR2 processor. That Bionz XR2 processor essentially is the two XR processors that they had and the AI chip, and puts it into one specific processor, because that processor allows for all the autofocus and active stability, dynamic active stability, but also heat management and battery life. There's so much that processor can bring to that new camera. And essentially the FX2 was just a rinse and repeat of the A7 IV, just in an FX body, so it has that really nice, reliable fan situation. So no overheating at all, which is phenomenal when it comes to, interview stuff, and even if you're having this for podcasts, live shooting. If you have a particular situation where you need a camera to run for a long time, the FX2 could have been that camera, or still is that camera. But the A7V does pretty much everything better than this camera. Caveat with the overheating, the A7V probably won't last as long as the FX2, but in 4K 24, 4K 25 or 30, it still lasts a very, very long time. I got it to last more than 60 minutes in 4K 60, and essentially it still wanted to keep going. It's just my memory card ran out. So how do I feel being an FX2 owner and the A7 IV has released? Well, I'm pretty annoyed. I really want the A7 IV's sensor and all the technology in the FX2, and in my opinion, that's essentially what the FX2 should have been. It literally should have been that sensor, that tech, directly inside of here. And it would not surprise me if Sony decided to bring out, let's say, for instance, an FX4 with that very, very particular sensor, very particular specs, the screen, everything straight into that FX4. It literally just makes me want to completely throw this in the trash. Well, not throw it in the trash because it cost me money, sell it and buy an A7V. And look, there were a couple of reasons why I bought the FX2, and that's to replace my A7 IV because my wife actually has the A7 III, and that's starting to die. So I thought I'd give her the A7 IV and just get something that has a very similar look, the FX2. So I can have this as my YouTube talking head camera, but then also my behind the scenes camera and stills camera as well. So it kind of, does a lot of my dirty work. When it comes to my corporate shoots, a lot of lens reviews and all that sort of stuff, I generally use my FX6, and this would actually be able to be a B camera for my FX6 as well. So if I've actually got, an interview portion that I need to film and that I need a reliable camera, the FX2 is going to be that. I don't know if I'm going to be selling it. I could probably literally just leave it in my YouTube studio and have it as this kind of talking head camera and social media camera. It's still going to be perfectly fine. I'm just a little bit annoyed that I did buy this camera a little bit too soon, even though there were a few situations where I had to have it at a very particular time. I do wish I could have just waited that little bit longer and got the A7V. And look, I know the A7V isn't absolutely perfect, but it does everything quite well. And if I sold absolutely every camera I have in my studio, you could pick up the A7V and it almost do absolutely everything that I've got with all my cameras. Sure, RAW external, open gate, there are a couple of things that it doesn't do as good as the other cameras that I do have, but it still can get away with almost 99% of situations. And that also brings me to the open gate drama. Now, I've done a full video on breaking down, is OpenGate actually worth it? And I absolutely recommend you guys watch that. But essentially the breakdown of OpenGate, you can utilize the full capabilities of the sensor. Now we have 3x2 sensors in most of our mirrorless cameras. You know, the Micro Four Thirds has like almost like a 4x3 sort of ratio that can actually do OpenGate as well. But having the ability to film OpenGate in these cameras gives us a little bit more headroom. But also if you do want to spit out a 9x16 portion of that exact video that you filmed, this could be extremely beneficial. But one of the caveats, if it's 3x2 OpenGate and it's 6K, that's where the difference lies, because the 9x16 portion of that actually ends up being 4K resolution. Whereas if you're taking a 9x16 portion of just a 4K file, it's only going to be like 1080p. And you can pretty much see from this example right here, I'm filming on the FX6 and I do have 3840 by 2160, which is just your 16:9 in 4K. And if I get a 9x16 portion of this, it's 2160 by 1215. So essentially it's almost like a 2K file, just a little bit larger than a 1080p file. But like I said, if you are filming in 8K 16:9, this is where you have more room to crop in and you have slightly better files to work with in that 9x16 portion. So you can actually see there is a massive benefit when it comes to filming in OpenGate and having 9x16 portions of that 6K OpenGate, because it's pretty much a 4K file that's very similar to me literally just turning the camera on the side in the Sony cameras, because I'm pretty sure it's only the A7V and it's the A1 and the A1 Mark II have that 8K, and no other Sony camera has that 8K unless you go up to the Murano. And if we're talking about this kind of resolution, look, if all these Sony cameras had at least 6K resolution, then OpenGate may not be as beneficial as some people think, because you do have a little bit more resolution in a 16:9 and then you get the 9x16 portion of it. It's not as bad when you actually take that 9x16 portion. So for instance, the Nikon ZR also doesn't have OpenGate. It's only a 16:9 sensor and can record 5.4K up to 60 frames per second. But this 5.4K is way more useful if you take a 9x16 portion of that 5.4K sensor. It ends up being about 1701 by 3024 resolution. So it's around about 3K of resolution, and you just have more resolution to play with that 3K image in some short form content. So at the end of the day, when it comes to the whole OpenGate discussion, I mean, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Well, obviously it is worth it for a lot of people, but for majority of people, probably not. It's definitely not a feature where I see if the camera doesn't have it, it's a bad camera. It's just a really nice feature to have, you know, kind of like some other features that Sony is missing. So look, the whole point of this video is really just to voice my opinion on the FX2 now that the A7V has dropped, and now that I've actually had experience with the A7V. Like, I most likely will be selling the FX2 and picking up an A7V, because I feel like that camera is kind of the do-it-all camera that's for traveling, for Instagram and YouTube short form content. And then, you know, for all my professional work, I still have my FX6 to use. Now, the big question is as well is that, can I still do all the professional stuff with the FX2? Well, obviously, like, if you can't do professional work with any of these latest cameras that have dropped, it's not necessarily the camera. You probably need to look internal at your skills. Like, these cameras are absolutely phenomenal, and we are so blessed and lucky to have these kind of cameras nowadays when it comes to content creation. But if Sony was just in its own bubble, these cameras are fantastic. But Sony isn't the only camera brand out there. You have Lumix, you have Canon, and you have Nikon that's really breathing down the throat of Sony. And they're doing extremely well, giving us a whole bunch of features for some situations, less cost. So let me know your thoughts. Did you buy the FX2? Are you slightly regretting it like me? Will you be putting it on Marketplace? Will you be buying an A7V? I mean, let me know in the comments below. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Let's get it.